Okay. We've talked several times about what is interpreted and seen as emotions in this physical state. They are a very... If your divinity is like a rainbow gyroscope, which is the best description I can give of a soul from the divine perspective. Emotions are like... It's like little filament bursts that come out from the divinity to the surface. It comes to the surface to help us to understand what is happening with our divinity. How it is moving, how it's acting. Now, do not think this means something negative, because it's not. It's a beautiful thing. As your divinity comes up with ideas and plans and thoughts and creativity, these waves of... These waves of emotions come up, and they help us to explore and guide us and understand. And play. It makes the playing with divinity, and especially with divinity, even more fun. Emotions are a truest expression that comes from your divinity. What we would term here in this physical expression as negative emotions. Emotions that make you feel uncomfortable. We're only supposed to be a quick recalibration of your divinity. So that as a wave of fear or pain or like that would come along, it would be quickly catch your attention to say, oh, I'm going to be off kilter. And to pull you back to where your divinity is in balance. That is what it was naturally. The natural expression of emotions were for that purpose. I'm going to say purpose, but it was not that it was designed to happen that way. It is just what happens. It even happens with God, the Great Father, the Great Mother, Light, all of the divine. All of creation has this balancing mechanism of the divine. It just helps us to see that something is out of balance in the divine, and it's coming a little off or distorted, and it's to help us to realign back into the divine. So you do not have necessarily what you would call bad emotions. And you should not try to control the emotions. The emotions are trying to tell you something. What you are facing here, because you did not, for one reason or another, which are not really important at this particular point, at some point in your existence, you had a flare of an emotion that said you needed to go back to balance, but you either would not or could not get back to the balance place. And I say could not because even though you are of the divine, when you come into the physical, then you lose the ability to fully access and interact with your divinity, and it becomes very dense and slow and sluggish. And there were those who took advantage of that. And also in the physical, you have the idea of that some people do not have the ability, say a child against an adult, or a physically weak person against a stronger person, or to be able to always act upon what your divinity was saying. So what happened was your divinity became distorted. And in that distortion, because the natural reaction is to have emotions trying to tell you how to get back in alignment, your emotions became distorted the longer this was allowed to occur. And in a culture that was made to control others and not allow a free expression of your divinity, these distortions became cultural, and ways of controlling them and working with them became cultural, and there became societal accepted ways to deal with and handle emotions. And for those who were of the weakest states, they had the most limits on their ability to express emotions, as you did not realign with the balance of the emotion. Then the distortion became even deeper and greater and more off kilter. So what you are left with are souls that the soul itself is distorted, because it is distorted by not being able to respond quickly to what the emotions were directing them towards to keep balanced divinity. Now at this place that you find yourself, where there are so many, many, many souls who have been distorted and twisted and are trying, but divinity is still calling out for balance, but it doesn't know how to balance. So you will have emotional flares coming up, not just from what's going on now, but from your very conception, from the very beginnings of the distortions. These emotions are still trying to say, we need to be balanced, we need to be balanced, we need to be back into the divinity, back into the divinity. And so they will flare up. But because there are so many distortions, sometimes the emotion waves will bounce off each other and create even more convoluted and distorted emotions that you cannot understand what they are telling you need to do. One of these big distortions is guilt. Because in divinity, everything is always fair. It cannot not be fair. Fair is, it has to be. And because in the cultures that have existed in this distortion, fair does not exist immediately and quickly and obviously. The guilt and the desire for justice have become deep, long, and distorted. And this emotion had a huge impact on the ability of those who were controlling to get those who they were trying to control to actually act, because it was so loud and so strong. So those who were of the controlling hierarchy came up with ways to give a false relief to these emotions. When you do something that is strongly against your divinity, you'll have this surge that will come up and it will say, oh, you shouldn't do this. This is not good. And if you continue in that path, it becomes stronger and harder and stronger and harder, telling you how to realign. This is very deep. This is why this is taking a little longer. This is very, very, very deep. And what I'm saying here, many, 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 many cultures, many, many souls, not just here on earth, are deeply tied in with the idea of how to deal with these feelings of guilt in a way that will be beneficial. And those who try to control try to get you to move away as much as possible, or to realign what guilt is trying to say, to make it just sort of not be there, so they can get you to continue to stay away from your divinity. And in this, they have created concepts that are known there as guilt, confession, and forgiveness. And we say that they have created these concepts because there is a point of healing that occurs that could be described as forgiveness, but the forgiveness that is part of the concept there has a sense of obligation, and in divinity there isn't an obligation. There is not obligation, it just is. So if there's a sense of obligation behind it, then you're not really acting in harmony with divinity. You're acting in harmony with hierarchy and being controlled and falling into that. So this is very difficult and of a subject to discuss, because we know there are many who have found some beauty in light, and they will protect these concepts with all that they are, because they are very fearful of what would happen if they did not have these concepts. Okay, so imagine there's a soul, and they're in a distorted state because they are not allowed to freely express their divinity. They are being controlled and manipulated, and there's divinity. They know this is what is happening, and they don't like it, but they feel stuck. And when that happens, and you feel that you will do anything to realign to your divinity, and you will lash out. Now, because this has been going on for so long, the distortions have created bizarre lashing outs. Many times, what you are lashing out at has nothing to do with the realigning to your divinity. Your divinity is just in a panically frenzy and just lashing out at whoever comes they get to. And in the culture of hierarchy, there is a ladder, I will call it, or steps, or ladder, we'll call it, that you may act in certain way. You act in certain ways with those in the same run of your ladder. You act differently to those who are higher on your ladder, and you act differently to those who are lower on your ladder. Those who are on the lower on your ladder of hierarchy, the ones that are higher on are given more freedom as to how they can treat them and what they can do. Whereas those that are higher on your run of the ladder, you have to accept whatever they do. So what happens is, when your divinity says, I am not being able to freely express my divinity, I am hurting and in pain in this distortion, I have to fix it. But through the lens of hierarchy, you cannot lash out at the ones that are most likely causing and holding you into this limitedness. So you will most likely lash out at those that are the soul feels are lower on the hierarchy ladder. They are not really lashing out at and really realigning to divinity. They're just lashing out in the pain. They're trying to realign their divinity. And in so doing, they harm others and cause them pain and suffering. But in divinity, which is love, and in divinity, which is always fair, this causes a pain. It's like a sharp guilt. No, you can't do that. Or no, I shouldn't. But at the same time, your divinity is also saying you have to do anything you can to make this stop. So you're stuck in this circle, a cycle going on. And because it was so complete throughout all of these cultures of hierarchy, they came up with these methods of, okay, if you do something to someone, then you can confess to someone either on the same run or someone on a higher run of the hierarchy, and by just saying that this is what you did and it hurt you and you don't want to do that confession nullifies it. It is taken care of. And even though deep down you knew it wasn't true, it was browbeat into the physical existence that you were having to the extent that you wanted some relief, any relief. And if this says you're going to have relief, you'll take whatever you can get. And so the idea of confessing to relieve your guilt was propagated. It does not relieve your guilt. You know it doesn't relieve your guilt. Because as soon as you confess, unless you are trying to fix the situation, and your confession is part of I've done this wrong, now how can I help, what can I do to try to fix it? Unless it's something like that, you can feel this is not really working. And then you feel that you yourself are bad because this thing that's supposed to work isn't working on you. Also, if you confess and the one to whom you harmed does not accept it or continues to be in pain and suffering, your divinity and soul knows that there is not a balancing going on and knows it's not right, but you feel angry because you don't know what to do, to how to fix it, because you haven't been given any opportunities to be able to fix it. And so you find yourself many times lashing out at the very person you lashed out at to begin with because you're still in pain. It is because the tools you have been given to help to deal with what your divinity is crying out for, your soul is crying out for. You do not have the ability to do it with what they have given you. And you do not know, in the constraints of the society in which you're living, how to do this. And so then you just try to forget it, or push it aside, or just say the words, and hopefully saying the words enough, and just trying to make it disappear. Just make it disappear. You cannot make it disappear. Okay? It doesn't disappear. It's still there. All of it, from that you ever have experienced, from the very beginning, is there. That is adding to your distortion. So many distortions. So many distortions. So you say, okay, I'm in this extremely distorted state. I don't know which way is up. I didn't know. I get these strong emotions, and I try to act on them, and it seems to me that I'm still feeling bad. If you act on an emotion and then you still feel bad, or you feel bad in a different manner, whatever you have been doing isn't work coming from divinity and isn't helping. Stop. Just stop. Okay? Stop. Quiet yourself. Talk to God, the source of all light. Now, I'm going to be very specific here. And saying, do not call and ask for your guides to help you. Do not be in generalized God. Because those in hierarchy have put in, what you call trip switches. Yeah, trip switches, whereby if your guides are also from cultures that have worked within the ideas of hierarchy and have accepted and worked within these ideas of how to deal with the pains of guilt and balance and fairness and all this, then they will not be able to truly help you. They may do it what seems like it's helping, but it will still be there, and you'll know it's still there. So do not ask for your guides to help you. Do not ask for religious leaders or ascended masters to help you. Okay, I know a lot are becoming very angry and defensive of this. If you use the term ascended, as in ascended masters, then that is hierarchy. And even if they have truest and purest of intentions, and they've really got a lot of their distortions straightened out, they have come through these cultures, and you want the fastest, quickest line to your divinity, and that is not how you're going to get it. It is not how you're going to get it. Go directly and only to God, the source of all light, being very specific and seated in your mind. See in your mind a goldy, silvery cloud. All the colors are also in there, but it is this brilliant brightness. And see yourself as a gyroscope of beautiful colors and light that comes from that. And if you see that, as you say, God, the source of all light, and that is what you're directing, just directly to that which is the beginning, the God, the source of all light, then, and say, I need help in realigning my divinity. I am so distorted, I don't know which way is up. I've had so many messages and teachings, I don't know, I'm so confused. And you leave it to Him, and you speak to Him from your heart in honesty, and ask Him to please surround you in His light, and to help to bring your divinity back in line. Then He will. And you will hear from your soul things that you need to do to help this to stay realigned, or to become realigned. What you can do to help and assist it. Listen, as long as what you are saying is not because you're just trying to make yourself in a better position, but because you just want to be in line with divinity, and you care for all others as equally as you care for yourself, and you're coming from that place, then you will get the messages as to what you need to do. God will align you to divinity, and the messages will help you to stay there. Be careful of rationalizations. Be careful of well-meaning spiritual, philosophical, psychological ideas. If you get a message from God and your heart, and it says, you need to do this. And then you immediately say, oh, but I can't because of, and you start pulling out the rationalizations, or you start calling in guides and masters. Well, is this okay? Is this okay? It will only the distortion will only return. And I'm not in any way saying that any guides and masters are not to be listened to, because they have wonderful advice and they're fantastic. They help. And I'm not saying you can never listen to your guides for anything. I'm saying very specifically that if you are having these feelings of guilt, anger, forgiveness, and you've done what you think you should do or paths to help you get aligned, and you still keep having these things coming up from inside and these bubbles coming up, realize that, what is that saying? Sign of insanity. You're doing the same thing over and over again but expect different results. At some point, realize that that path is not getting you the results you need. It does not have to be a long and drawn out process. It may be longer than you want because your distortions are so deep and so long that you have an inclination to revert back to them. So it may take a few times to get through the distortion, the realigned distortion. But ask for God to come in, and He will come. And if you have any fears or apprehensions when you call for God, the source of all light, to come in and to do this for you, tell Him so. Say, I have, because of all the programming and because of all the things I've experienced, I have these doubts and fears and anxieties. Please help to realign that also. Because those are also, if you have any anxieties or fears or thoughts of limitations into what God, source of all light, can do, then those are also distortions. So just let Him know. Just be, and you don't have to use highfalutin woo-woo-woo language. Just talk. He has a wonderful sense of humor. He's very compassionate and creative and understanding. So just talk to Him. However is you. If you like flowery language, go ahead, but you don't have to. If you are very rough, construction-y, earthy type, then talk to Him like that. If whatever it feels comfortable, and He will respond to you. I'm not going to give you, other than that, any other one-size-fits-all pattern, because your distortions are unique to you. There are cultural distortions, but how it affected each person, each individual, because you were an individual, would be individual and unique. So other than going alone to God, the source of all light, to fix this, there is no other universal way I could say this is how you deal with it. He is very brilliant. He's very light, and He is already here. He's already helping to realign the distortions. But souls who come to Earth are of an extremely stubborn nature. Souls who come to Earth are also very inclined to not listen to what is obvious and to do the most, from some perspectives, stupid things and find fun in them. And yes, you can find excitement and fun in things, but if you don't listen to your divinity, you just start to create problems, and they get worse and worse and worse. And so you're going to have, because you are, not only do you have all the eons of cultural things upon your soul, you also have your own stubborn extremes. Those souls who choose to come to Earth, and I'm going to say that very specifically, choose to come to Earth, because there are some that have come here that were not chosen but were basically kidnapped. But souls that choose to come to Earth are of the most extreme nature, of the most stubborn nature, and they're going to have, in the healing process with God, because the healing process with God, the source of our life, is a more quiet experience. It's a more Om experience. It's a more peace experience. Those who are inclined to the extreme will very likely begin to have themselves get defiant and then bounce around like a crazy ball all over the place and not actually get aligned. So it may take them longer because you have to keep catching the ball, bringing it back to God. Think, okay, and he it's like, yeah. What is those things? Okay, think of like those air popcorn things, where then the kernels get hot, they pop around, and then you can watch them popping around, pop, pop, pop. Well, that's sometimes what souls are like from Earth when they want to have their real divinity realigned. They come to God, and then as soon as He starts working on them, they go, bing! And He's like, okay, and then it's like things get bad, they come, help me, bing! And then things get bad, help me, bing! And He's like, it's sort of funny in one way. And so just, if you really want to get back, and you don't have to give up your extremeness, ask God to sort of have you hold you in like a little bubble so that you can't boing away, because you're going to want to boing away, because as soon as you get a little bit better, there you go. So just breathe. Allow it to happen, allow it to happen, allow it to happen. And if you find that at a later point in a day, a week, a month, a year later, that they're coming back up, go back to Him saying, yeah, I know I'm a bit of an extreme pointer. Could you help me get this, help me again? And He'll help you. He understands. He loves all of you. He loves your extremeness. Your extremeness takes you to the farthest of creation. So, yay, but understand what that means. Okay. The healing is coming. The healing is there. God is smiling. He's smiling and a little bit of a giggle, and he's like, yes, He wants to help you, but He knows how difficult it is to help Earth souls who choose Earth. He knows how hard it is because of their nature. But He knows it's fine. It is fine. We'll get through it. It's going to be fine. Just breathe, and know it's going to be fine.